Hi, I'm Dale and welcome to Spotted Motors and welcome to the Spotted Motors Used Car Buyer's Guide. Now, along the years, I've owned around about 50 cars, and along that time I've learned a lot of hints and a lot of tips on when buying cars. So what I thought I'd do is share a few of them things with you so your potential next car, hopefully you won't get your fingers burnt. So, obviously you've looked on the internet and you found a potential car that you're interested in. Now, you want to determine whether it's a trade or whether it's a private sale. Now, if it already doesn't state that on the advert, when you phone them or when you email them, the first thing you want to do is say, is your car still for sale? Now, if they turn around and say which one, then it's very obvious that it's a trade seller, unless it's a private seller selling more than one cars. But again, why are they doing that? So you've established that, and what you want to do before you phone them is write a list of questions down that you want to know. Now, if them questions aren't already in the advert, you want to make sure that you get them across to the owner. Now, the things you want to know is why they're selling it, how long they've owned it for, how many owners, service history, and the general vehicle condition. Now, once you've asked all them questions and you're happy with the answers, the next thing you want to do is go and view the car. Now, the V5, which is the logbook, wants to be in their name and their address. Now, this is very important, and if it isn't, I would be a bit curious to know why it isn't in their name and address. And when you do go and look at the car, you want to go and look at their address. Don't go meet them in a car park or at a train station, especially if you've got a pocket full of money, you don't know who the hell the owner is. So, another tip is to take someone with you, because two eyes looking over the car is a lot better than one, and also it just gives you a little bit more support when you do look around the car, and you're not shy of asking questions and pointing things out. So once you've went all over that, you want to go and look at the car and try to look at the car in the daylight, in natural light. It's just easier to find dents and scratches and overspray and things like that, and also try, which is sometimes hard, especially this time of year, to look at the car in the dry, with it being rain covered. Again, it's hard to see dents, scratches and overspray, and when you get the car home and wash it for the first time, you don't want to get any nasty shocks. So we've got two BMWs, a newer one and older one. We'll have a quick look at them and I'll show you what I look out for when I'm buying my used cars. Come on, let's go and have a look. So here we have two BMWs, one a 62 reg and the other one an N reg. The buyer's guide does cover both cars, but it's nice to have a newer and an older one in front of us just so we can go over them both. Now, the first thing you do when you come to view one is just have a real good look over the bodywork. Now, depending on the age and the mileage, it's all consistent with the age and the mileage, but with newer cars, which is this one here, what you want to look for is any overspray. Now, the best way to look for overspray is just look at things that shouldn't have paint on them, and if they do have paint on them, you want to know why. Now, newer cars, it'd be nice to think that they're quite clean, quite tidy, and they haven't had any bangs, dents or scratches, but if they do, you want to know why. So just look at any plastics and just see if there's any overspray on any parts like that, just to make sure that it hasn't been any accidents. With older cars, they are prone for dents and scratches as they've been on the road a lot longer. So don't be surprised if you do see a little bit of overspray or a little bit of accident damage, car park dings, because they've been on the road a lot longer and they've seen a lot more action. And also rust. You want to have a real good look around the car for rust. And again, anything like this, the previous owner might have had sprayed in the past, just keep on top of things. So newer cars, closer eye. Older cars, just don't be so harsh on them. So the next thing you want to be looking at is the tyres. Now, a good way to check the tyres is they always have wear indicators on, which is a little bit of a nib on the tread pattern. Now, that wants to be even right across the tyre. Any offset wear on the outside or on the inside means that there is possibly suspension damage or suspension wear, or even the tracking's out, which Don't let this put you off, but definitely budget to get things like that done. Same with newer cars, just check the tread pattern right across, just to make sure that there's no suspension or tracking. Again, while you're down on your knees, just have a look at the discs and have a look at the pads if you can, just to see what condition they're in. But MOTs will pick up on all brake problems, so just have a look at the advisory list just to double check yourself. So next thing you want to do is unlock the car. That helps. And what you want to do is, on a low mileage car like this, is just check the driver's bolsters. Hop in, have a look at the gear gator, because on a low mileage car this is a good telltale sign to make sure that it is a low mileage one. And even with the brake and the clutch pedal, just make sure there's no wear on them. And again, on the steering wheel, these are real good telltale signs to make sure the mileage matches up with what is saying on the dashboard and what is saying on the MOTs. Another thing I like to do is just put ignition on and make sure all the lights come on. And what this is for is just to make sure that things like this, which is the engine management light, does actually show, because if it's been took out, that won't come on, which means that as the bulb being taken out to hide a problem. So with the older, more mileage car, again, the driver's seat will show a little bit more signs of wear, which should be just consistent with age and mileage. So whatever the MOT says, the interior should be a bit of a telltale sign and should match that mileage. So now we are going to have a look under the bonnet. Now, once you've got the bonnet open, first thing I always check is the oil filler cap. And what you want to do is make sure it's nice and clean underneath. Anything white or anything gungy under there is possible signs that coolant is mixing with the oil, and that is the first telltale sign. Next thing you want to do is grab the dipstick, make sure you've got a bit of a cloth, have it pulled out. I don't know why that one's so stiff, but there we are. Have it pulled out and check the level. And what I always do as well is just get my fingers on the end of the dipstick and just rub the oil together. Have a little look at it in the light, and just to see if there's any metal filings or anything like that in the oil. Check the coolant level. Make sure the engine is cold before removing any of this type of stuff. And you just want to look at the coolant colour as well. And just check all the levels on all of the liquids in the car. Just make sure that they're all topped up, which means that it's been well maintained. When it comes to engines, this is a time and chain engine, but if it's a time and belt engine, you want to make sure that the belts have been changed. So service history is the best way to prove that. So once you've looked at the top of the engine, what you want to do is get underneath the car. And what that is for is just to make sure it hasn't got any oil leaks or any coolant leaks. On a wet day like today, I'm not going to get too lay on this floor too much, as I've already checked it when I did buy this car. But another good tip is have a look where the car's been parked and have a look at the driveway. If there's any massive patches of oil, you really want to get underneath that and really have a good look to make sure that there isn't any major leaks. So with this being a rear wheel drive as well, check the rear diff and also gearboxes. Just have a real good look underneath, make sure there's nothing dripping underneath there, because stuff like that can be a bit of a pain to fix. So once you've had a look under the bonnet, next thing you want to do is start it. Now I always leave the bonnet up so you get a real good listen to what the engine sounds like. Always ask if you can start it from cold, so try to get the owner not to warm up before you turn up. You want to make sure all the dashboard lights go out once the engine is on. And now just go and have a bit of a listen. Now what you want to listen out for is any knocks, any rattles, any loud tappety or metallic noises. Anything that doesn't sound right normally isn't. And when starting them up from stone cold, it means the engine oil is at its thickest and at its coldest. So any noises It should be quite obvious when the engine's cold. Also, while the engine is running, just make sure that the exhaust isn't blowing, and have a look at the colour of the smoke coming out the back of it. Anything blue or anything too smoky is normally signs of problems. Now, while the engine is running, it's a good opportunity just to let it warm up and just make sure that temperature gauge doesn't go up too far. And while you are doing that, just try everything out. So try the heater, try the radio, try the electric windows. Just press every button just to make sure everything works on the car, because what you don't want to do is get the car home, realise that the electric sunroof doesn't work and you have to spend money on it fixing it that you didn't think you had to. So don't be afraid just to press every single button just to make sure everything works. And especially on newer cars, there's a lot more gadgets in than this here, and they'll be a lot more expensive to fix. So just press everything, have a good nose at everything, just to make sure that everything is there and everything works. So the next thing you're going to be doing is, if you're happy with everything you've seen up to now, is you're going to be test driving the car. Now, when you do test drive the car, it's down to you to make sure that you're insured to drive that vehicle. You also want to make sure the vehicle's got a current MOT and it is taxed. So never go out in the car if you're not insured on it, or you're not third party on it, or anything like that, because if anything happens, you know, things are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. When you do go out for the test drive, make sure that the owner is with you, and all you want to be checking for is any weird noises. Make sure the steering's right on it, make sure the clutch is nice on it, make sure the engine pulls nice through all the gears and right round the rev range, make sure the heaters work and getting nice and warm, make sure the temperature gauge doesn't go up too far, make sure that it brakes in a nice straight line, it doesn't veer off to the left. Any weird noises coming from the diff, if it's a rear wheel drive, or anything, any gearbox crunches, make sure the wipers work. Just check everything out on the car, but always ask before you do anything to the car, do you mind if I try this, or do you mind if I try that, just to keep the owner nice and happy, because at the end of the day it is still his car. So once you've done the test drive and you're happy with everything, the next thing you want to do is check the paperwork. Now, obviously, we've made sure that the V5 is in the owner's name and the owner's address. And what you want to do now is have a good flick through all of the paperwork, just to make sure that everything that the owner said it has done has been done, and it's a good indication of the vehicle condition, making sure that everything's been logged. Also, what you want to do is, just to make sure the mileage is right, is go through all the old MOTs, just to make sure the mileage is consistent. And then what you want to do is get the service history and cross-reference it to make sure that the mileage matches the service history to matches the MOT. For example, if the car done 100,000 miles in January in the year 2000, and then it was serviced, you want to make sure that them dates match along with the mileage. So another thing you want to do is see where it was serviced to where it had the owner was, because if the owner lived in Liverpool and the service history is from Newcastle, say for example, why don't they match up? They should be, in and around the same area, which just making sure that everything is right and the history is for this vehicle. And while you are doing all this, never stop looking around the car. When you're in the boot, just lift up everything and make sure that everything is nice in here. Make sure there's no wet patches, make sure there's no creases, any of this. Never stop looking around the car, because you never know, anything might show up that might put you off. So just constantly look. And once you've done all that and you are happy with everything you see, I suppose you're ready to make an offer. Now I'm going to leave that down to you, because bartering is quite a tricky thing. Some people like it, some people don't like it. But once you agree a price and you're happy to take the car home, make sure that you sign the V5 and make sure you put the correct date on it, and make sure that the owner sends that off to the DVLA. Make sure you get all the history that comes with the car, and make sure you get the keys. That was a good catch. Make sure you're insured when you do drive it home, and make sure you are taxed on the vehicle as well. The last thing you want to do is take your brand new or not so new car home, only to get pulled and get a hefty fine and get the car took off you on your first hour of owning it. Now, I've probably missed loads and loads of stuff there, but they're just a couple of things that you might not have known, just to help you along when buying used cars. Now, I always say, look at as many as you can when looking for your next car. And another thing I always say to myself, if you have to think about it, you don't want it. So, any questions about everything I've said there, don't hesitate to put a comment in the section below. And if there's any tips or any information that you find that helps when you look at buying used cars, again, put it in the section below. I'm always willing to learn new ways and new tricks and new things when it comes to buying and selling all sorts of classic cars. Well, just all sorts of cars. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you do like what you see, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Spotted Motors.